We in the stew, baby. Okay, let's go. Hold on. I had some gummy worms. It's a little late for me. I get a little loopy at 8 o'clock. It's actually 8:30. All right, so we're in the studio. Wow, we're in a studio. Not a real studio, but a real studio, if that makes any sense. Welcome to the. Let me restart that. It deserves a really big introduction because this is real. Welcome to the Scar Wars. Let me restart that. Welcome to the Scar Wars podcast. We back in the stew. Yeah, wow. I'm excited. The reason I'm so excited, give me a second. Got some phone stuff going on here. The reason I'm so excited is because we have a new side. Keep clapping. We have a new setup. So the podcast, or I'm sorry, the channel that when we a couple months ago were doing videos, we were using my phone, and that was pretty much all we had. So now I'm talking to you on camera. There's a camera here. I now have a new computer. We have all our stuff set up for a real setup. Now, this is all due to a very amazing man, almost like an angel. And don't be hit me with, oh, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Frick out of here with that. Get out of here with that. All right, it's a person, okay, and he's real and he's tangible, and he's a good guy. So he helped us out. We got the setups all here, ready to go, and we're ready to fully launch this thing. So that makes me very happy. Now, to get into, what I kind of touched on before is I told you guys we'd be doing basically something like a podcast style format where basically I would talk to you and then we'll have guests and things of that nature. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited about the Scar Wars podcast. You like that? You like that? It just rings perfectly. And the meaning of the Scar Wars thing, because I really played with this thing, is I wanted it to mean something to other people. And I was thinking of, this is nerd out, so just sit with me for a second. In episode 9 of Star Wars, there's a thing called kintsugi that they use on Kylo Ren's helmet, and it's when you take something, and this is actually a Japanese practice of art, is when you take something broken, like a vase, or let's use a cup for example, a cup breaks, and you take the cup and you actually form it back together as it was with gold lining. So it's almost like having scars on a person, or like showing that you were broken in one way, but remade in a sense. So the Scar Wars idea was we're continually fighting and continually living our lives, and things are happening. We have these scars, and we're continuing to push forward. So it's called the Scar Wars podcast. I know you like it. I know you like it. It just hit differently. With that being said, the first thing I want to dive into today is what has been going on the last few months. I'm going to be honest with you, it's been very heavy. So it might, it's going to be a little heavy just to get into. And I'm going to try to keep my energy up, but your emotions are your emotions. So here we go. The last few months, following Chad's trial, have been a lot more difficult, great and difficult at the same time. Basically, I ended up feeling more. I started to actually process everything. And now that there's almost a chapter closed in a sense of what happened for my siblings, a part of me just really had that reality really set in now that like there's this chapter is now over, and yet I'm left with this void. The void actually has been my mom. I have really obviously struggled with how I feel about her and our relationship. But the last few months, I've really started to actually feel for her. It's crazy because I started listening to some of the stuff that's been going on, and I've listened to some things obviously throughout the years, but for the most part I stayed away from everything. You can't function in listen to that stuff and try to heal and do all that stuff, right? So for the first time, I don't know, I started listening to some of what people were saying, different YouTube channels, and more than anything, I started listening to her testimony at the end of her trial, and then I listened to our phone calls. And I guess a part of me was trying to analytically piece things together. And I know that it didn't make sense to me because I'm someone that can just say there's certain things in this life you'll never understand. No matter how much time you spend on it, no matter what you do, you're not going to understand it. Here's what I will say though. The kid in me really started to miss his mom. And obviously I miss my other family, but I've never felt this way about my mom before. I've had my moments over the years, but having another baby coming, and I don't know, as time goes by, as you go through holidays and birthdays and events and things of that nature, you're just missing people. And it hits you like on those days are those best days. Sometimes they're the hardest days, you know? And I'm sure people who have lost people understand how that feels. It's sometimes the worst days because it's kind of almost a reminder of everything. And again, being super raw and honest, I never really digested all of this stuff with her. There's been too much grief and pain and hurt and with everything else. So how do you process being, it almost feels selfish. It feels selfish to think about what I lost with my mom. And, you know, part of me just finally got to that point. So I share this because I really hope and pray that it touches somebody and helps you feel that it's normal to be conflicted and not just feel one certain way. You know, I was somebody who I almost could have write everything off with her, and then realizing, you know, that I can't change always how I feel, and I can't just turn off my emotions and pretend to be this or that. So what I mean by that is I never knew how I'd feel about my mom going forward. I guess a part of me always just kind of said, you know, one day maybe I'll talk to her, maybe I won't, blah, blah, blah. But I think a part of me just said, you have to move forward, and you just take a loss, and it's another loss. But a part of me now is starting to grieve as if I lost her, but she's not gone. So I think that's hard. And I pray that as I speak about this, it helps other people realize that sometimes you lose people in your life that aren't gone. They haven't passed away, but you lost them. And it's like grieving a lost person that's alive. And that is a different feeling, because I guess in some ways, if you lose someone, a part of you can really come to grips with the fact that they're gone. But when they're still alive and things are, you know, they're still there, but they're not, that's a different kind of hard. It's a different kind of feeling, and it's a different kind of grief that you have to go through. So I just really hope by opening up and talking about that, it really helps you understand that it's normal to feel that way. I don't have a conclusion for you. Most of the time I'd like to tell you what I've learned or how I'm getting better. And realistically, I haven't, I'm not there. I don't know what's coming next, and I'm not going to try to, you know, pre-plan for anything or how I'm going to feel later. It just is where I'm at. So even if I would have had equipment, it might have been really tough to do videos because I've just been in a different place. And I wanted to preface that to you guys because this is how this channel's been from the beginning. We've talked about things, and I feel like I've tried to share the best that I possibly can, always in hopes that it helps somebody. I really pray that it helps you. And that's all that I can get out of this situation now is that's all that you can even hope to get out of a situation like this, is that somehow, some way, something is good, not all bad. The next thing I want to talk about on this episode is something that I've been very patient in my approach with, and it's Chad's property. So there's a lot I could say about this. I've really took the time though to think about what I want to say, how I feel, I want you to know I did wait to make the video and talk. I waited to talk about this until after I spoke with the new owners, because I felt like they deserved, no matter what media says, they deserved an opportunity to share their piece without just listening to other people. And I think that's the best way you can handle the situation, is try to get from the source, if you can ever do that. I'll give you a disclaimer, I'm not going to mention them. I'm not going to talk about the owners, and I really just want to open up how I feel about this. I'm going to take my personal feelings as the only thing that I'm representing right now. It's just how I feel. I've seen what people are saying. I've heard what people are saying. And there's a lot of mixed emotions. So here's what I'll say. The number one thing I saw was the city of Rexburg versus the family. And in a sense of, this is a Rexburg's issue versus this is a family's issue. That's a tight argument. I can see both sides. I think you guys need to understand the gravity of that property. I've been to Chad's property. We went up there a day or two after they found the kids. And you know what's weird about it is, when we went there, I'm gonna try not to get emotional here. When we went there, there was, on the side of the house, there was a fence made. I'm sure you guys know this, especially people who live there. There was a fence made. There's a fence there, and people had put endless amount of things on this fence. And I remember, I've never talked about this, so give me a second I'm gonna slowly walk through this with you, but I remember driving down the road and the feeling of almost like I could see the night that it happened for both of my siblings. I don't know how to explain this. It's like a part of me, it was like a scary movie, like flashes of a scary movie, that you've never even seen. It's just in your mind. And we pull up, and I get out of the car and I see this fence. And this fence is covered in love and peace. I mean, it was like, it was the only light in this darkness. And I'm going through, I couldn't even process where I was. I could see somewhat I could see the property of what happened. And I remember sitting there, taking a seat on the ground and just seeing all of this stuff. And it's like, here's this beautiful wall that's like with so much love. And then right behind that is this scene of hell. And I bring that up to say that Chad's property, personally to me, will always represent a kind of a piece of hell. And I say that because I say that because his property was the scene of three different lives. 3 different lives were taken there, right? I don't have the exact details, and I don't want to get into the details. I do want to say though that I've seen something beautiful, that fence on that property, and I remember how I can't explain it. It's not like it balanced everything out, but it was so much love and respect for my family that in that moment it was like, man, I wish I could explain this in words. I don't know how to explain it. It's like seeing a rainbow in a pitch black room. Does that make sense? Like it just wasn't something you could explain, really. It's just like this something beautiful in darkness. That's the best way I could put it. But let me also say this. Really, personally, how I feel about this is it's really hard for me to see how you could ever take the PTSD and the hardship of that property and turning it into something else. Okay, that's my own personal opinion. I would not put it there. I want you to know that I share that with the owners, and that's. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not putting that. I'm not going to bring out the conversation, nothing of that nature. But I said that I personally would not put it there. And I understand that there's other stuff and controversies around this. Here's my personal feeling as this is my family. I want Tylee, I want JJ, I want Charles, and I want Tammy to have respect to them. And I want people to be as respectful as possible, because I've sat back and watched a lot of people say a lot of things, and I've never talked about it. This to me hits really close to home, because this is where my siblings were. And I don't feel as if trying to change that property to turn it into something beautiful, I don't, it's like you're putting lipstick on a pig. And I say that with all due respect, but also this is how I feel. It's hard for me to imagine beauty there. Now also let me say this. I'm not closed-minded so much to the point where I say that there's no way anyone could ever do anything there. If I don't want anything bad for these owners, right? It's not like I have bad intentions, but if somehow, some way they can have something beautiful there, I'm not opposed to that. What I am, though, is I'm opposed to the idea of creating a circus. I don't like that. And my brother, my sister, and Tammy deserve better than that. And I have to tell you that because I've been seeing this go on. Again, I wanted to talk about this immediately, but I'm glad I didn't, because I was, very upset, and I was reading what people were saying and hearing what people were saying, and I'm glad I didn't react to it immediately. But ultimately how I feel is this. I would never personally put something there on Chad's property. I would put it in the park. I would do something different and still plan and want to do something different. Again, I am not going to sit here and say that I want anybody to fail in their endeavors, especially if they have good intentions. And if something somehow was beautiful about it, I would not be opposed to that. I just want it to be loving and respectful to my family, right? And I'm glad, and that's all I want to say about it, because everything else I had to talk out and work through first before I was ready to talk about it, because I had a lot of thoughts and opinions, but this is the just and the main thing that I really wanted to talk about. So I had to get that out there, okay? Whew, this is gonna be a heavy episode for me. So that's how I feel, and I really hope you guys can understand where I'm coming from. If not, you're allowed to have your opinion, but I really truly believe that going forward we need to understand and be respectful, and I don't want that place, it's not their graves, but I don't want it desecrated. As weird as that sounds, I don't know. I don't want that place to be a circus. So I'll leave you with that. Whew. Now, after digesting all of that, here's what I'd like to talk about now. The future of this podcast. We've talked about it a lot. I don't have to get into too much detail, but I'd love to share with you the fact that I'd love to get some guests on. And one of the things I'd love to do with you guys, as I've told you before, you guys have been here through a lot of it. And even if you're new, this is a community that I've really been proud of to be a part of. And I know it sounds funny because it's my channel but I'm proud to be part of this community because it's a very loving and supportive community. And I've really just loved that there's been even support for other people, even in comments. And with those comments, a lot of people have sent the longest comments. And when I've read your guys' comments, it's been life-changing for me, honestly, because you guys have your perspective. You tell me your thoughts. You've even asked me my opinion about your life situation, or even asked questions. So I had an idea. I hope this is a fun idea. I hope this is something that you guys would like to do. But I created an email, and I thought it'd be really cool to start doing some segments here where I could read through emails that you guys send, and we could have some open discussions. It could take a whole episode. You never know. My email is askcolbyj@gmail.com. And listen, let's be honest. Coming with all the good comes a lot of times the opposite and the bad. And if you're gonna send crazy emails, right? I'm gonna be honest with you. You send a crazy email. I'm not gonna talk about it on the podcast. We're not gonna have a conversation about it. Regardless, people are gonna do it. But I'm just letting you know. I also want to give you a disclaimer. If you send an email, I want you to send it knowing it might be used to talk about. And what I would do is basically a format of reading through your email, giving thoughts throughout, and then kind of summing up what I think, whether it's your life situation or even questions that you have about something. I'm not going to talk about my mom endlessly. I have to tell you guys this now. My mom and my relationship with my mother is not something that I really have a handle on for myself. So we're not doing that. And I'm just going to tell you that straight up. I'm not going to talk about everything about this case for very long. I do want to say that, I'll go back to the email thing. Just give me one second to say this. I want to get some stuff off my chest of stuff that has happened in the case that is important that I feel to talk about. But outside of that wheelhouse, we want to go forward and be able to help people and turn this into something beautiful. I really truly believe that it can be. So that's the direction of this. Now back to the emails. It's the same thing. If you guys want to talk, if you want to send questions, if you want to send your life situation, right? Tell me where you're at and you want me to discuss it. I could either give you an email back and just say, hey, are you okay if we use this? But I just want you to know up front, if you send it, more than likely, I want to use it for us to discuss. So just knowing that way when you send it, it's not like a personal email where it's like something you wouldn't want shared, unless you specifically want to say, I don't want that shared, things of that nature. But I thought that'd be a really good idea. I'd like to be able to connect with you guys in that way. And I thought it'd be really interesting because it gives us both perspective. If I read through it and we're talking about it and there's a conversation being had and people are learning lessons, I'll tell you personally, that's a lot of how I've learned. I've learned so much from watching people talk about things. People talk about their testimonies. People talk about their life stuff, their trials, how they made it through it. I like when people talk about when they're in it though, because that's a good place to talk about hard stuff, is when you're in it. That way other people who are going through it can understand they're not alone. It's a big deal. So I would love to have that here with this community and with this podcast. I would love that. And again, I'd love to have guests on. So I have some ideas of people we are going to talk to and be able to kind of do some interviews and just have the same exact concept, just have back and forth and really learn from each other. So I'd love to do that. But that is it for this episode. I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to get too much off the bat. I just wanted to introduce you to the new studio. Hope you like. I got some shadow action going on in the back here. But I really hope that you guys know, now that we have the equipment that we need, now that we have all this stuff, we're ready to really, really be able to do this podcast the right way, do this channel the right way. And so I'm beyond grateful for that opportunity. I want to thank you guys for watching the Star Wars podcast. I love that. That is nice. That's dope. And I'm a Star Wars nerd. If you guys are OGs, you know that. But thank you guys for being here, a part of the podcast. And we'll just continue to learn, grow, and go forward. So I appreciate you. Thank you. And I'll see you soon.